Welcome everyone to the SWGOH Community Survey. I am joined by the wonderful Thysk down here. I'm Thysk on Twitch and on YouTube, I believe, but mostly on Thysk, mostly on Twitch. This is the results of the community survey. We're going to run through what the community thought in detail. Probably take us about an hour, something like that. We only have about 16 slides or something like that. I don't know how many slides we've got, but we're going to run through that. We're going to run through the slides and we are going to discuss the implications and what it means and what you all voted. So the process, obviously, in December, we put out a community survey. Lots and, too many people filled it in. It's quite ridiculous. And it's taken me a long time to kind of go through all the statistics, pull it all back in, try and kind of order it in the way that it would make most sense. And yeah, here are the results of the survey. Right, I need to go across to a different... Here we are. Push that button. Good, it has appeared. The survey has appeared. Yeah, I'm going to run through the survey results. This is the survey, so it says 2023. I know it's 2024. I'm sort of classing this as our survey of 2023. I will compare some data to what was said a year ago because we asked the same questions twice. So some of the questions were direct rips of what we did last year to see whether people had changed. And we will also break some down by the size of people's accounts. Or I also looked at whether people spend or don't spend and whether that changes attitudes. Anyway, thank you for that, Dooney. So, the results. What do you really think? Now, why this is important, we ran through it a little bit in the introduction. People answer things very differently when they're on their own, sitting there. There's not a prize. We didn't collect anyone's name. So, people weren't filling this in because they might win something. They weren't filling it in or not filling it in because we were collecting their email address. People were just filling it in because they wanted to have a voice and they wanted to give their opinion. And I should give a massive thank you to everyone that filled it in. Some of the effort and the comments that we'll go through, and we'll read some of the comments in particular. The level of effort that people put into this is quite stunning. Anyway, so without much further ado, the responders. So we'll start off, we'll talk generally about who filled it in first. So... who filled it in? Let me know if you can read this. It should be relatively easy to see. So who filled it in? Quite a massive mix. So we had 6% of people between 1 to 4 million, 13% of people between 4 to 6, 15% 6 to 8, 5% 8 to 9, 13% 9 to 10, 29% 10 to 11 million, and 19% over 12 million. So everybody filled it in. Well, except if you're less than 1 million, it seemed you didn't have a box to fill. But that's the kind of split. And as you'd imagine, lots of people who have played it since day one or have played for 5 to 7 years are kind of dominate. So bear in mind that the survey responses we are looking at, they do kind of reflect everybody. So I kind of see this as quite an accurate reflection of probably the people who maybe watch Twitch or who are very engaged. You know, the game does struggle from getting in new people into the game. So a lot of the people who have played it for a very, very long time. And just for reference, free to play, people that have spent... Oh no, hang on, sorry, that is the wrong way around. Please ignore that. It was 72% of people had spent money and 28% had not spent money. I have typed those in the wrong way. Please ignore that. So 72% of people have spent more than $50 on the game. And bear in mind that most of the results are coming from people greater than 9 million and who have played it for 5 to 7 years. I will break some of them down to the lower GPs, so some of the graphs I have broke down. Yes, it makes more sense. Yes, thank you. So that's who filled it in. A kind of relative cross section. I wouldn't say it's particularly groundbreaking. It's just what it is. Happy? Thysk?
Yeah, the first thing I looked at when I looked at these is to see what the percentage of relatively new players to very veteran players, and I was a little surprised that there was as many people in the like 1 to 6 million range, which is 19% here. Because I do agree with you that the game has difficulty bringing in new players. But yeah, this like the thing you said about this representing Twitch, I think that is a very good representation of Twitch, just what I would guess it would look like.
Yeah, it represents who we are. I mean, I don't know. It's very hard to get actual data. I mean, maybe in other stats we'll kind of look and we'll pick out exactly how many people are playing at different levels and maybe get a better idea. But that's what the survey is. So please bear that in mind. And with everything in a survey, you're only as good as the people filling it in, and therefore we won't constantly clause everything with the statement, oh, the people we surveyed, or whatever. You know, let's take that as read, that the data is the data and this is what we collected. I should say that purposely, I don't force this on anyone. So whereas it would be very easy for me to spam this into tons and tons of Discords, I kind of let it organically move through guilds. So I'm actually not as directive. There's a danger that if I put this in certain Discords, we might be swamped by a certain community's opinion. So essentially this comes from lots of different guilds, lots of different people, and they're all giving in opinions. Okay. Right, that was who filled it in. Okay, we're going to start with just basically how do people feel about different game modes? What are people's favourites? We just got people to rate different game modes out of 10. Pretty simple stuff. Here's how they felt. Nobody likes filling in a 6, it turns out. It's amazing. As I was going through the results, I should point out that there's a certain numbers people just don't like. People prefer answering a 7 to 6. Anyway, the first graph, a simple bar graph of the percentage of people who filled in certain scores out of 10, and the average is there in red. So GAC is actually our favourite game mode. I'll tell you that now. We've got GAC and TB here. On the next slide, I have Conquest and TW, and we'll talk a bit about those. But GAC 6.2 is the sort of weighted average of people who liked it, and TB around a 6. Or 6.0 was their average. So both game modes relatively well enjoyed. I think GAC still remains the most popular of all the game modes amongst everyone. Yeah, people kind of like it. It did surprise me that TB was so high. There are more people that kind of gave a TB a 1. As you can see, there's a little bit of an inflection up. So whereas GAC has a sort of a more normal distribution, there is a few people that start to dislike TB and give it a 1. So anyway, so that's, yeah, but apart from that, yeah, it surprised me that TB was actually as popular as it was. I guess people maybe don't not like it. I mean, it's kind of functional enough. We should also remember people are doing different TBs. They're not all doing ROTE. They are doing other ones as well. So whether I wasn't able to break down exactly which TB people were doing, but yeah, people don't seem to hate it too much. But I would say that essentially GAC is the one we like the most.
I think that's going to be a little bit skewed. I think most of these are good distributions of people, but I think because this survey originated in Twitch, and that Grand Arena is sort of, Twitch carries Grand Arena to some extent. I think this one might be a little bit skewed as a result. I think the other ones are probably fine. I'm not saying it's significant enough to invalidate any of this or anything like that. Grand Arena is a relatively popular game mode, but I do think that is sort of the flagship mode for Twitch, and that may be a slightly skewed as a result.
Yeah, it is the more streamable bit. Anyway, that is okay. So that's how we feel about GAC and TV. The next two, TW. This is when we start to drop down. So whereas we were 6.2 and 6 for GAC and TB, TW starts to drop to 5.2. Much flatter, not quite a much larger mix of people. Some are liking, some are not liking. But yeah, TW. But where it really starts to drop off, Conquest. We're going to look a little bit more about Conquest, exactly why people don't like Conquest later on. But Conquest really starts to drop on the score out of 10. No great surprise when you kind of... And obviously, we probably ran this back in December, so people were probably doing Conquest. It was certainly... We'd started the Darth Bane. I think generally Conquest just isn't as popular. Like I say, later in the presentation, we go into exactly why, and we ask people to give comments and stuff, so we'll cover that in that point. But initial feelings, Thysk, it's not really that surprising, is it?
I agree with what Wolverine here said. I think it was Wolverine that he's actually surprised that TW is that high. I agree with that. That's my thought as well. I assumed TW was going to be the lowest of the 4 game modes that we've seen so far. I expected there to be some people who really liked it, like the 8. There's some like a relatively high 8 or 9 section in there, but I expected TW as a whole to be the lowest, since there's so much, in my opinion, there's so many reasons that people could sort of have that sour in their, in their opinion. Yeah. And Conquest is lower than I thought, but I think the Conquest is low because it really sucks for low size accounts. Once you can start doing hard successfully, I feel like Conquest it ends up being a lot better at that point.
Fantastic. Yes, you've segued beautifully into the next slide. But yeah, so that's kind of what people put. But like I say, we'll look at the real reasons.
My reasons aren't the real reasons.
Well, no, your reasons are the real reasons.
No.
Your reason. Okay. So let's cover TW first, right? Why was TW so high? Well, weirdly, when you break down by GP, TW is not popular by people from 1 to 12 million, right? Those averages are lower. But the people over 12 million much prefer TW or rank it very highly. So the people who are obviously, and if you're above 12 million, I guess you're very serious at the game. You probably spend money on the game. You've certainly played it a lot longer. And therefore TW starts to become like another GAC. So the reason why TW is actually as high is there is a higher group of people. Everyone over 12 million likes it a lot more. Sorry, I just used a very inclusive term of everyone. I shouldn't say that. But yeah, the higher GP people have a preference for TW. They don't see it anywhere near as bad. It is just about everyone else that struggles with TW. And therefore, I guess these people that are 12 million have put so much time and effort into the game that they don't mind. They don't mind the added effort, and they live for it and they enjoy it. And I'm sure SWGOH is one of their highest enjoyments in their days, and it's something they're very proud of. So maybe that kind of time is more grinding at the 10 to 12 million mark, where that time isn't quite there. So that's why TW is maybe higher than we kind of thought. Certainly, the game mode as a whole needs a lot of improvements. But people over 12 million don't mind it as much.
I think people over 12 million are probably also in a better position, or possibly required, to engage with TW Omicrons at a higher rate too.
I should say that generally when I looked at people who spent money, they were at least 0.2 or 0.3% higher than the people that don't spend money, just about across the board. So every single game mode, if you spent money, they kind of had a greater preference for it. Now, obviously, these people are more invested, and that's why they are maybe deriving more enjoyment from it. But that kind of happens. But yeah, there is a sort of a slight bias here that if you spend money, you tend to like things more. So the 12 million people more likely to have spent money, therefore they have a slight preference for things. Anyway, so that's what TW. So I kind of, maybe that's why TW is higher than we expect. Again, something to discuss in long form another time. What was the other question? Conquest. Why is Conquest so low, or who hates Conquest? Well, when you break this down, this is a weird one. I was surprised. Okay, because I fully expected it to be Conquest to be hated unless you got to 10 million, right? Or 12 million, etc. The reality of the fact is that it was the people that were 1 to 6 million actually don't mind Conquest. Well, nobody really likes Conquest, but there wasn't as great an ire or an anger towards it as there was from the 6 to 10 million people. Now, what I figure is that the 1 to 6 million people aren't doing hard, or they are not trying to get that latest character. So maybe they aren't being pressured to do something they don't necessarily want to do. So you've kind of got three groups here. You've got people 1 to 6 million who are not doing the harder one, or not struggling to get the character because they don't care. But they do care, sorry, they care, but they know that they're not going to get Darth Bane day one, so they're just doing as best as they can. Then you get the people over 10 million who can get Darth Bane because they have a bigger roster, so it's easier. The people that really struggle with Conquest are the people that are 6 to 10 million. Those are the people that don't like it. They're the ones that ranked it very, very low. So there is a kind of a middle ground of people who, I guess, are doing the hard, but really struggling to get the feats. So that's kind of where the Conquest kind of broke down. And there is, I guess, people in chat here who have rosters in that 6 to 10 million, and they talk to me and they sort of say to me, you know, they are struggling to do feats. They don't have Ewoks. They don't have the newer characters as well. I think there's been a real issue with Conquest recently where it's basically moved to new characters and things, but we'll talk a bit about that. Make sense, Thysk?
Yeah, it does. I just to reiterate with that the small group having a much better time, and then it gets harder when you try to start taking on bigger challenges. I absolutely know that there's lots of people at the lower end that graduate from easy to normal, and when you do that, you don't have to do much to get the same rewards you were getting in easy. So they can basically just go for the first or second box, and they can basically just take it really easy for a long time because they know they can't get like all of it done, and they're in no place to, they're not even ready to face hard, or maybe they are barely able to get hard and they're just getting the first box there too. But yeah, I completely agree with that assessment.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably where it breaks down. So I guess something I never thought, I never realized that the 1 to 6 million GP accounts would actually be kind of enjoying Conquest, or, you know, wouldn't be having the grind, but it kind of makes sense. Like, and what you say, when you first join the hard, it's like, you know, you're basically being gifted all this new stuff. Anyway, good. So that's how Conquest, and that's kind of, I think, we don't need the summary, but essentially, GAC remains kind of the most popular, and Conquest is not the popular one. Now we're gonna get, like I say, we'll look later on at exactly why. But yeah, so that's kind of the basic kind of what do we like and which groups like which game modes, and some little anomalies in there about game modes that people like and stuff. So that was section 1. Section 2, we're going to add new additions into the game. New in 2023. Look at me again. More mistakes in the presentation. Okay, we asked people. Okay, so we asked people a question specifically. The question was lots of different things which had been added, or maybe not added specifically in 2023, but had come into the game, and you were allowed to tick as many of them as you wanted, including none of these. So the question, there was a few more on there. I think there was mod attenuators on there and things. There was a few more on there, but it was different parts of the game and what you enjoyed. So people were actually able to tick as many as they wanted. So kind of a measure of, you didn't need to pick between one or the other. Now, I only selected a few out here. I would say that overwhelmingly positive it was the turn meter order indicator. 74% of people who did the survey actually enjoyed turn meter order. It is an amazing thing to add in the game. It's so vital, and you use it so many times in a few battles now. Yeah, it's a great addition, and it came out of nowhere, which is the weirdest thing. Anyway, it is good. Yeah, who are the... Well, I think there's 26 people that just don't like things. But turn meter order is good. But the weird one, the thing that really kind of... We'll talk again later on. The Crate Dragon Raid, 38% of people enjoyed the Crate Dragon Raid, but only 20% of people liked the Speeder Bike Raid. So there is quite a drop-off between the Crate Dragon Raid down to the Speeder Bike Raid. And weirdly, 16% of people enjoyed Datacrons, which is quite a thing. There's obviously some missing bars on here, Thysk, which I edited out because they weren't that interesting, but difficult on the Crate Dragon Raid versus the Speeder Bike Raid, but people really, really seem to enjoy the Crate Dragon Raid.
Well, the Crate Dragon Raid, you get to use your characters with that, like the way you're used to. Also, the Crate Dragon Raid had reached full maturity. It has gone the duration, and as a result, people got to see the end of that. Back when Sith Raid came out, and this is true for all raids, but I think Sith Raid was probably the best example of this, where when you started out in the Sith Raid, you just got your butt handed to you, right? Like you just had to claw in phase 1 just to get, a couple percent. And then as time went on, they released new characters, new strategies developed, etc. Eventually people were soloing, or at least doing like 30% of phase 1 by themselves. So every raid, I think, is going to become more popular as the time goes on, and people are able to find strategies, get new characters, get higher gear tiers, which happened in the Sith Raid as well, if I remember correctly. Gear 12, I think, was originally what was available, or maybe Gear 13 had just come out when the raid came out, but people didn't have a lot. So as time goes on, you are better equipped to deal with raids. So the longer a raid exists, the better utility people are going to get from that raid, in my opinion. So I think that's what we're probably seeing a lot of between Crate Dragon and Speeder Bike, specifically. Speeder Bike has the other caveat of you have to completely relearn characters as well, which to some people that might be a problem. Some people might be just like, well, I can just sort of like just do this raid and not even understand it, and it works. So that might actually be a good thing to some people.
I think you're right. We do. I think no. I am later on in the presentation. We do go more into the Speeder Bike itself. And yeah, some of the things you're saying are right. I would say that when we get to it, you'll see that a lot of people actually like the rewards for the Speeder Bike Raid. So even though people are not getting as high a relic, or maybe not getting as far, they are still feel as though they're getting the same rewards, which is quite cool, or interesting, certainly for me. Anyway, so people love turn meter orders, and there are 15% of people who like Datacrons. And we should never kind of minoritize those. We're going to talk about Datacrons now in particular, but we'll bear that in mind. That 15% of people, we love them. Thank you. Okay, anyway, let's talk about Datacrons. Datacrons, oh my god. It's impossible now to talk about SWGOH without the entire conversation being dominated by Datacrons. If you ask anyone in SWGOH, what do you think of the game? The first sentence out of their mouths will be their relationship with Datacrons. Highly divisive. But let's look at... Let's firstly, how do people actually feel about it? Wonderfully colourful graph here. People really don't like. There's 52% of people really hate Datacrons. And would rank it a 0 or a 1 out of 10. And we'll get some words from those people and we'll look at the comments why. And like we said, there's 16% of people kind of like Datacrons, and there's 32% of people in the middle. So it really divides the community, and they are really not popular. As much as I like them, or certainly it is very nuanced, I would say, why I like them. And we'll see some of those comments, because some people really put time and effort to explain the relationship with Datacrons and why they like them or don't like them. So we'll look at those in a minute. But from a basic facts, 52% hate them, 16% like them, 32% of people in the middle. Happy, Thysk? Makes sense?
It does make sense. It does make sense. And for the 16% of people who like, I mean, realistically, CG has done a much better job with Datacrons than in the past. It's still a little frustrating, I think, to the people who are below 7 on this list. It's still frustrating that sometimes you need to have the right Datacron. Like if CG could make Datacrons impactful without making it so that you had to get like the 3 rares in the set, if comparing it to like a collectible set where there's various rarities. If you didn't have to have those, like if you didn't have to have the Jabba and the Leia and the Afra and whatever else, like the 4 specific ones that come from 2 or 3 from each set, I think Datacrons would be a better accepted. People would understand, or at least be able to see what CG wants out of Datacrons. Basically, CG wants to be able to keep the Grand Arena meta fresh with Datacrons without permanently changing anything. And I think that again, I reiterate, I think that CG has done a much better job in the last 4 or 5 sets to make it so that we don't get those Lord Vader Datacrons that make him just absolutely insane, where you have to fight fire with fire. You have Lord Vader that basically kills everything except for Tarkin Lead, which uses the exact same Datacron. You need to fight fire literally with fire to be able to really compete against it. As long as they stay away from that sort of stuff, people can probably learn to appreciate Datacrons a little bit more. It still is a pain that Datacrons exist temporarily. You put a lot of work in and they go away. Don't want to derail this here, but I feel like Marvel Strike Force has the same goal, but they do it better by just changing the way that the mechanics work in their variety of Grand Arena, because it doesn't cost anything. Sometimes you do want to gear up certain characters as a result, but those gearing up of characters will then be permanent. So I feel like the way that it's being done in Marvel Strike Force is a little bit better for the players, which is often not the case. Like Marvel Strike Force has a horrible history of being awful for players. But I definitely think that CG is doing a better job going forward. But there's going to be some people who just never like it because either of the temporary nature of Datacrons, which of course does suck, or just the fact that it's an extra thing that's tacked on top that they don't want to deal with.
I mean, I think you're 100% right. The only thing I add on is that the Datacrons allow them to slow power creep. Now, power creep at the sense of it is every team that comes out, if you have insane power creep, then every team that comes out can basically kill every team before it. And we had a period in the game where we went from Jedi Knight Revan to Darth Revan to Gas, or to Treya to Gas. We basically went through a series where the power creep was so high that the only way to kill a Gas was with another Gas. And every time a new team came out, it was infinitely better than what was before it. And there was no way to kill up the meta. Now, essentially what power creep does is it does actually remove characters from your account in reality. Now, I have my bugs now just sit there doing nothing. Now, they've not been removed from my account, but because of power creep and because of newer teams, they're irrelevant to me. I don't use them. So I understand people's frustration that the Datacron physically disappears. But essentially, there are some teams that I've put relics into or investments into in time that just aren't useful anymore. So they're not removing characters from power creep, but what I like about Datacrons is it allows them to keep shifting the meta, keep it fresh, without necessarily having to keep reworking or launching better characters.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Grand Arena itself allows power creep to be slower, though, too, because power creep was brought on because of Squad Arena. Like you had to have power creep to make Squad Arena force people to build the new teams. You don't need that anymore in Grand Arena. It works both ways. You both don't need to keep up with the latest trends in Grand Arena, but you also don't need to be able to beat all the teams that came before when a new team comes out in Grand Arena, because there's it's a multi-team experience, right? So in Grand Arena, when someone's first starting out, back originally, I'd always recommended that people would get Supreme Leader Kylo as their first Grand Arena. When there's four Galactic Legends, I always felt like Supreme Leader Kylo was the clear winner. Sith Eternal Emperor was easier, faster to get, mostly because of the fleet aspect of it. Sith Eternal Emperor needs just one ship, and Supreme Leader Kylo requires 7 ships to get a capital ship, and then you have to wait for the capital ship event. But aside from that, Supreme Leader Kylo in the meta, just how everything played together, 4 Galactic Legends, Supreme Leader Kylo, in my opinion, gave you the best case in any scenario that you would come across. And Master Luke, an important aspect of this was Master Luke was very difficult to get, because Jedi Luke was difficult to get, Wampa was difficult to get, and Hermit Yoda was difficult to get. That was a factor in there. If it wasn't for that factor, Master Luke would probably be the best choice, except for the fact that I guess Sith is wrong. Anyway,
yeah, it's yeah. They're no longer Datacrons have stopped them launching characters that are just infinitely better than the one before it, and forcing you to do those. And you're right, GAC doesn't quite do that. Anyway, Datacrons.
Just to finish my thought, because I got confused for a second. The point is, I do still feel like in Squad Arena, Supreme Leader Kylo is the right answer, but when they went to Grand Arena where the crystals were, Sith Eternal Emperor was a lot more valid, because you didn't have to be able to beat their Galactic Legend if they couldn't beat yours. So it doesn't matter that Supreme Leader Kylo trumps Sith Eternal Emperor, generally speaking. Like, if they put their Supreme Leader Kylo on defense, you expect they're going to put their Supreme Leader Kylo on defense. You put your Sith Eternal Emperor on defense and they can't beat it, then you're even. You don't have to be able to beat theirs. And that's where there's a lot of benefit to Grand Arena being able to make it so that they don't have to power creep all the time. You can play that multifaceted strategy of Grand Arena so that you don't have to, every new team doesn't have to be the strongest.
Let's look what people actually said about Datacrons. I mean, it's so nuanced, and it is a very personal thing as well, you know. Well, before we look at that, different when you break how people feel about Datacrons down by GP, people at higher GPs like them less and less and less. So the people from 1 to 6 are actually kind of okay with them, giving them an average of 5.4. People 6 to 12 giving them a 4.2, and the people over 12 a 3.7. So bear also in mind that a lot of the people who really, really, really don't like Datacrons are actually the people probably higher up who are running into them more often and are certainly running into the more insane ones. They're having a much larger effect. So actually, again, if you're talking to somebody that's 1 to 6 million, they're kind of okay about Datacrons. They're not that bothered because they're not that impacted by them. So it makes sense.
Exactly what you're seeing here. It's clearly the more relevant they are to you, the less people enjoy them.
Yeah, exactly. So the people that are having them impact the most has a greater grind on them or a greater effect. Now, it's something I didn't expect, but also these are the people that are very engaged in TW, so they're being affected by Datacrons there as well. So yeah, that's kind of the distribution we see when we break that down. Just want to cover that before we talk about Datacrons in general. The massively positive thing, everybody loves the fact that they're now at lower relic levels. Well, not everybody, but there was a huge positive. No, there's a lot more than 5 people in the red group. There is, a lot. I had to go through everybody's comments, which is why it took me so long. Everybody loves the fact, or a strong positive for reducing the relic levels, which I thought was so strange for me, because when I looked at it, I would have expected people don't like Datacrons, making them more prevalent, you would think would have been a negative thing. So I don't know. I thought it was strange. I find it strange. The only thing that, obviously there is somebody that's given like 0. There's quite a few people that actually gave on the lower levels. The bars are quite small because they're dwarfed by the size of the 10 bar. But there are people that don't think it's a good reason or a good thing. And I was initially one of them because of, like I say, the Datacrons are difficult for me. They're quite complicated. And making them more prevalent in the game is not necessarily for me a positive thing. So I personally would have been probably down on the lower end. But community sees it as a very high thing. They like them. So the people that are wanting to engage with them are now able to engage at lower relic levels. But yeah, so positive. And positive because it also shows that CG can change things. Datacrons are not fixed. They did make quite a radical change with this change. And kind of demonstrated that they are kind of changing stuff. Anyway, Datacrons, just want to cover that quickly. I
think this is another example of how CG is doing things better. I think this is a good thing. I guess I could still see the level 7... the level 9 of the Datacron being 7 relic 7 brought down to relic 5. Maybe that's not as important, but I think the real winner here is the level 6 going down to relic 3. I think that is very impactful. I think that a lot of people see a lot more of their roster benefiting from Datacrons, and I think that's overall a good thing, in my opinion.
Yeah, I like it. It allows people to get involved earlier with them, use them, and I think it matches up more. If you look at people that are doing the hard conquest, so they're actually getting Datacrons, but they're only at 4.5 or 5 million or 6 million. Those people don't really have full teams, so they were probably getting more Datacrons they could actually use, or they were probably getting Datacrons they could never get a character for. So I can see how it's kind of balanced it a little bit. Let's look at some of the comments. The slide does not seem as well. I will read these. These go off the screen due to bad presentation. Right, in the yellow box, there are some things about Datacrons that I like, but the re-roll mechanics are the worst. Ditto for the interface, being locked into a single Datacron without being able to switch between them. They call this being siloed is awful. Also, there's no way to name them or differentiate between all the different ones at a glance without going into each one. They need a whole lot of quality of life updates and UI updates to make them palatable in the slightest. They really feel half-baked in the most CG fashion. Another comment, well, sometimes they miss the mark, they do always change the game. They create new counters, they promote some characters up to the top of the strength ladder, so to speak. All in all, they keep the game fresh and never stale. I do wish that the datacrons you want to get were more accessible rather than having to re-roll over and over again, sometimes still never getting what you want. The RNG factor to the re-rolls gets a little frustrating at times. And then huge number of negative comments. There's another slide of these. They need to decrease the stats. I dislike them because I need them to be competitive. Lower secondary stats would be nice as it gives a boost but isn't battle defining. Shouldn't be allowed to be used on GL squads. Throw them out of the game. It was an interesting adventure, but it's time to put them away and throw away the key. I don't like that it expires. Also too much RNG in the re-rolling. More comments. I think I only had 2 comments on these. An item you have to invest in that is temporary and skews matches. They are awful and have caused more people to leave the game and not give a hoot about GAC. One comment I really, really liked, there is too much variance in the benefits of secondary stats. We go from extremely powerful secondary stats, defense 400, to almost entirely worthless secondaries. Split physical, special accuracy, split armor, resistance penetration, with very low rolls. Some consistency across the board would be better. I did not enjoy the massive bolt sets we had previously of defense percentage plus, as stacking max stats made for so many teams that were just incredibly dull to face. Datacrons are too complicated and many small insignificant stat boosts. While I hate the idea of investing in something temporary, I have to admit they do freshen up the meta well enough for me to still invest in them. I think they have too much impact, but they can be fun. I think they should work to ensure Datacrons don't buff GLs too much. They suck, but we have to accept because they have no other choice. They are a terrible addition because they dramatically lower the value of high-level grinds for a GL and get rid of them. I read millions of comments on these, and there was some really interesting kind of trends. Obviously, people don't like them, people want rid of them, but people that really kind of spent time to kind of talk really appreciate what they're trying to do. They appreciate that they do keep the meta moving, but there was a growing frustration on the distance between the datacron you need and the datacron you get. And there seems to be a growing chasm between the 1 or 2 good ones in a set versus the other ones in the set. And I do think CG have kind of moved a little bit shady on it, and they are releasing sets now where there's maybe only 1 or 2 that are good. And I think there is a growing frustration that those 1 or 2 good ones are almost exclusively now being on a new character. So whereas when they were first brought into the game, people like Tarkin would get one, or Darth Vader, nowadays the good ones are Bo-Katan, or Bo-Katan Mandalore, and Drogon, or Dark Trooper Moff Gideon. They're now exclusively on brand new characters. So they've gone from being something that moved the meta around to something that just buffs your that buffs the new character, and has become another pressure to unlock new characters faster. So I think frustration mainly on the gambling mechanic, I would say. The gambling mechanic in particular has been a difficult one. I don't know. What do you think about... I mean, everyone has a different opinion on them. But yeah, I think that's the difficult one for me. That is where they're being used now. They're not necessarily being used where they originally were to shift the meta around. They're being used to buff new characters, and I think that's where they maybe have dropped down for me personally.
Yeah, I think for us, where we are, we're in one of the worst positions for new characters get the good Datacron sort of mentality. People below us, that's actually a good thing, because people in like very low Kyber and below, they're not going to see the new characters very often, so it doesn't matter that the good Datacrons are on new characters. So I think there's a very meaningful reason. I mean, I think that you're right that CG wants to encourage people to get the new characters, and at the very top, 90% of those people are going to get the new characters. 90% of those people, and I mean the very top, like the top 100, whatever. They're going to get those characters, and they're going to get the Datacrons for them. So it's parity. It's even. It's fair. For the people below us, like I said, they don't have to deal with it for the most part. So the fact that the good characters and the good Datacrons, they don't see them, it doesn't affect them. It's the middle ground where there's people competing against people who sometimes have, sometimes don't have the new stuff, and then the complexity of getting that, as some of those comments said, it can be difficult to get the Datacron that you want, and that is true. Because I feel like that's the worst area for Datacrons. Maybe I'm just seeing myself in this and projecting, but it just seems like that is the worst combination of what this environment CG's created is.
Yeah, I think now when I unlock a Datacron, I already know that when I roll the level 3, I'm not getting the good one. You know, I know I'm going to get some mediocre level 3, and I'm basically going to have to re-roll that or do re-roll mats to get the better one, you know? And it is the quantity of Captain Rexes I got was off the page, you know, and Omegas and things like that on the level 9s. I think the gamble mechanic isn't a great one. I wish they would reduce the reliance on that. I don't know. But
how do you think they do that? Just having the drop rates be equal?
Yeah, well,
like just 100% equal. There's 5 choices. It's 20% each.
I think so. I wouldn't see anything wrong with that. I think people would still re-roll. You know, the people at the very, very top, I think they would still re-roll to try and get 400% defense, for example. Just because they got defense twice or 3 times naturally, wouldn't, I think, necessarily lower people's spending on it. I certainly think that there are too many, in my opinion, there are too many of the secondary stats that are not impactful. And then there's some that are way too impactful. And I think it's narrowing that gap for me would certainly reduce some Datacrons that maybe aren't that good, etc. I also love the comment about we still can't name them. So when you end up with 60 Datacrons, you can't remember which of your 2 Afras, and you occasionally maybe place the wrong one, or you'll accidentally use one you need for someone else on a different battle. They're too hard. They're too hard.
Yeah, the UI is so clunky. And what the crazy thing is, like, if you could use the in battle, if you know what I mean, like the selection screen, you're going to actually put it on a team that you're going to take into battle screen. If you could just have that screen where you can just click around and see all the summaries on the collection screen, like that would solve. It wouldn't solve everything, but that would solve like 40% of the pain with dealing with Datacrons in your collection and upgrading them and doing all that stuff. I don't know why we can't at least have that. Like, sure, it would be nice to be able to be in one Datacron and hit an arrow to go to the next one instead of going out, waiting for a load, trying to figure out where you were, and then going back into the next one. It would be nice to have that. But if we could just have that that screen that summarizes the stats and let us select them that way, it would solve a lot. It would go a long way.
Yeah, I think you're right. The UI is terrible, and the fact that the datacrons sit in some other part of the game that you need to go to. You know, like I'm going to pop next door to the casino to choose my datacron, then I have to come all the way back to the off license to put it on to the team. You know, it's a difficult one. It's certainly the UI doesn't help it, so it's a shame that it's like that as well. You know, because it takes, like I say, there are a number of the comments did pick up on the meta shift and why they're in the game and reducing power creep and things like that. And it was starting to kind of come through with positivity to say, you know, to say, okay, why they're there. Like, people can see at the heart of them why they're there. I think they've just pushed too many of the little buttons, and it's a shame. But like I say, they did fix the relic thing, so maybe they'll listen. Maybe they'll do another change. You know, you never know. They might be working on a better UI for it. We will see. We will see. But yes,
they've had over a year. They've had, what, 2 years now?
Yeah. I mean, look, I'm not defending their speed of improving or changing things. I do think that they do know datacrons are not popular. They're not going to remove them. But yeah, certainly, maybe, you never know. We never know. We'll see what they come out with on their. They do have a lot of little bits in the game that they might need to kind of tweak, things like TW and GAC maps and things, but we'll see. Anyway, shall we move off datacrons? Summary of datacrons, we've talked ad nauseum. 52% of people really dislike them. 17% or 15% people like them. But many people are accepting that they allow the meta to shift. They reduce the staleness and excessive power creep, which is good. However, there's a difference now between the good and bad stats. Those are getting too large, and the good and the bad mechanics is too big. Anyway, also not popular. They're being used for newer characters and GLs. I think GLs is a very difficult one. Now, there was an interesting test case, and we'll talk about Leia in a minute, but this year they went, okay, we're not going to put them in GLs. We're not going to put them in GLs. Then they launched one and they gave one to Leia, but that wasn't the good one. The good one was on Drogon. So it's not a case of they shouldn't be on GLs on level 9. It's the fact is they just shouldn't be able to buff GLs at all. That's the thing that people kind of realized a little bit with the Drogon Cron is, hang on, I said don't put it on GLs, but you didn't. But you still made a GL team ridiculously good. So, or you changed that GL team. So yeah, I think a difficult one. I don't know how you handle GLs with datacrons. I think that any buff to a GL team is going to make it frustrating. Or certainly, they're so close to the game breaking power level on a GL team, and they can be so frustrating to fight because they have very much less counters in them. But yeah, I think how they deal with them on GLs is a very difficult thing. But because they're not able to test, that's the weird thing. They're not able to test excessively enough every datacron in every team, so they sort of launch these things, and we're the ones that find out. Yeah, so I think the GL thing is also something that they've never managed to resolve. And I certainly think having GL teams in particular just make the game very hard to balance. Anyway, that's datacrons. Datacrons. We love them. Okay. New additions, Leia and the Speeder Bike Raid. This is where we're going to go into some comments about Leia, what people thought about Leia, and we're going to look at what people liked or didn't like about the Speeder Bike Raid. Yeah. Oh, I will read this one. Another slide. I just asked people to talk about Leia. I did ask when people were unlocking Leia. There was just a large spread, and when people will unlock Leia, there wasn't too much interest in there. Let me go through the comments. Leia is a great addition to the game and long overdue. My only real complaint is that using Old Ben and Baze as our tanks looks so out of place, though it's better than having two marquees. She seems too strong, but the Datacron of Drogon has a larger impact on this. I believe without the Datacron, she is well balanced and a nice addition. I think they're overselling the GL by giving them an extremely good Datacron at the time of release. The Datacron should come later when everyone has at least a chance to play with and against the GL team to understand the basic mechanics. Only great on offense, duh. Actually, like there isn't power creep, keep that up. Waiting to do double drops after people bought the characters from shipments was rubbish. She's too defensive at the moment, and it was a shame she was not offensive as stated. Not the worst farm for a GL. I think the Drogon Cron makes the team super beefy though. They say it's an offensive GL, but almost impossible to beat in Arena and Squad and GAC. Lots and lots of comments on Leia when I went through them. All centering around, or the big complaint people had, or the thing that was most divisive with Leia, was they basically gave the team a Datacron before she arrived. So,
Yeah, I was going to ask, how long did we actually have Leia before she had a Datacron? There was a week or two, wasn't there?
It was,
or was that not even true?
I don't think it was even true. I think we went straight into the first GAC. She had the Datacron, I think.
Did she?
I think
I remember facing a couple of Leias very early, but I don't think they had Datacrons yet. But I don't know if the Datacron existed.
That could have been in TW though. There might have been a TW phase.
No, I'm specifically thinking about Grand Arena. I don't remember
but we certainly didn't go an entire season.
She came out mid-season, right?
She maybe, but there was very low initial introduction of her. There was maybe only about 900 in the game. Yeah, the GAC Cron was released about a fortnight after she came out. Yeah, it was a very small window. And because of the way they launched her with some not being farming, you had to buy the shards. There was still a very kind of narrow window or very few layers in the game. But it really kind of changed people. It kind of ruined her. I mean, nobody actually knows how good Leia is, if that makes sense. Like, we haven't really used her too much with and without the Datacron to really see her impact. She is anecdotally offensive, or she should be on offense, but the first thing they did was give her a Datacron that stuffed her on defense. So she's had an odd one. She's an odd change, but people were very positive on Leia. Like, they like Leia. They like bringing her to the game. A few comments about her team. Something I personally agree with. I shouldn't kind of focus on this and be kind of biasing it, but she doesn't quite have the iconic team around her that I would have liked on Leia. But we will see. Yeah, so some people kind of struggling with Han and Chewie and things like that going across there, or that team being so prevalent as well. We'll see. Anyway, so I think a lot of people are a little bit nervous about where Leia might sit in time, and yeah, and unsure where she kind of fits in the game. And again, people looking at the overselling with the Datacron early, or where that sits. So yeah.
Yeah, Gavsta asks, what team would you like to see? I'm curious as well, because I really don't want to see Han Solo being the ideal character with her. I realize iconically it makes sense, but I really don't want that to happen in the game. So I'm curious what you feel is the right team to have with her.
Well, I would have,
Gav says this as well.
Well, I would have quite liked to have seen. Well, I don't know if we could have got another Rex. Was he not on? Who was on? Who was on Endor? Or
Captain Rex was canonically on Endor now. There's a guy in the beard with a beard that was
rumored. Yeah.
No, they made it official. It was an official Disney decision, but it was after the fact. Obviously, it wasn't originally Rex. It was just a guy in a beard.
Okay.
Disney actually officially made that.
Look at him. I don't mind Drogon. I think he's okay. I mean, you've got people there, Nien Nunb, General Lando, General Han, any of these.
So you want a new Han?
I hate just keep continually bringing hands to the game, but
I know that's part of the problem. Like you sort of have to. I mean, you could do Captain Han, but why is Hoth guy there then?
Yeah, but then you've also got the thing that you've got Chewie that appears in the AT-AT anyway. So like, you know, you've kind of put Chewie in the team as well in the animation for her unique or for her ultimate as well. Sorry. I don't know. It's a difficult one. I would also quite like to have seen her just with the Ewoks. I think she would have been.
Do you think she should have been an Ewok Galactic Legend?
Possibly, yeah. I would have.
Like she's a rebel, but she's also she's
or
like
has some
Lord Vader is Empire and Sith, but he's for Empire.
Yeah, and like C-3PO. I think you could have. I think I would have liked to have seen a team that maybe had C-3PO, Leia. I don't mind. I think R2-D2 is okay, but I would have had Drogon, C-3PO, and maybe two Ewoks. But
I feel like at that point you start diluting the Ewok too much. You can't really make it an Ewok Galactic Legend at that point.
Possibly. I
mean, she needs to be a Rebel Galactic Legend to have Drogon there, and realistically R2 as well. C-3PO, you could probably argue they could give him an Ewok faction on him or something.
I think the problem with Han is he's just in all. I mean, he is one of the stars of every movie he's in. So, and he does constantly have more costume changes than anyone else. So, I guess that's why you end up with so many Hans. I don't know. It's a difficult one. I agree. It is a very difficult GL to give a canonical team to. But you could have just given her a team of Drogon-like troopers. You know, like just give them like, I don't know, make up forest people, and just have like a Drogon, have a Rex, an Endor Rex, have two other sort of Endor soldiers. I don't know.
So you want a new Bad Batch, 4 different Marquis. I mean, we already got 3 Marquis for her. We got Scout Trooper, we got Captain Drogon, and who was the last one?
Knyssa.
Knyssa, you're right.
Yeah, we had huge popular. The one thing that people really did like about Leia, not a difficult GL farm. People didn't mind the relic levels weren't difficult or too high. The other teams you got were quite good. So quite a lot of positivity, I would say, about the process of getting Leia, far closer to what people kind of liked. So I think people quite liked Leia. They thought the model was great as well. There was quite a couple of comments on that her model in game really looks like her and is quite cool. So, and people liked the animation of the ultimate as well. So a lot of positives with Leia, I would say. Not a lot of people negative, and the only negative just being the fact that we had that weird datacron. So none of us really know when we move back into 5s or even this set of 3s where to put Leia. Are we going to put her? I guess we'll put her on offense now, or do we put her on
most
defense?
People I think are still going to keep her on defense, but I do think that she's going to be a lot easier to deal with. I do agree 100% that a lot of people don't know. There's some people who do. I'm not one of those that do. But I do believe that Master Luke is going to go do well against her now going forward. And I think that's probably what people are going to generally plan on using against her.
I mean,
but I do also agree that they should, with the comment that said that the Galactic Legends should come out, they should exist for a little while, and then they should get a Datacron. I agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, even if it's a month or two, just so we understand. I mean, my understanding is that she's really going to struggle against the Death Mark, and therefore Reva can beat her quite easily in 5s, is my understanding. Okay. So that seems to be a more natural. I mean, when she first came out, we were using a Reva lead with SLKR as a counter. The Death Mark, my understanding is she struggles against. So I think that's possibly going to end up being a relatively decent counter to her. So, but we'll see. She can quite as easily just get another Datacron. You know, she's not going to win in this set, but you know.
Yeah, that's what I'm afraid of. That she's going to get another one quickly.
Yeah, yeah.
Who did they do that to? They did that to someone else recently. Who was it? Someone had a Datacron that expired not too long ago, and they just got a new one in this set. A new character? I don't know. I can't think of who it is. I feel like there's someone like that, though, and I'm afraid they're going to do the same thing with Leia.
Yeah, I think they were a bit like that with clones. They're a bit like that with Captain Rex, I think, as well at times. We'll see. We'll see. But like I say, we don't really know where she sits, so we were all kind of farming her or trying to unlock her or working towards her, depending where you are in the game. But as you work towards her, we didn't know how good she was. So, yeah, I still don't know how good she is. But we shall see. Time will tell. Time will tell. That's Leia. Speeder bike raid. Speeder bike raid. So, again, we gave people lots of comments, positive, a mixture of positive comments and a mixture of negative comments, and we got them to tick the ones that applied to them to see what people thought. So here's the positive ones on the speeder bike raid and the percentages of people that ticked them. Huge positivity about it only being once per week.
Yes.
And what really surprised me, and I do applaud both CG and the people that filled in the survey, I like the fact that CG are trying to bring new gaming experiences. Now, lots of people mock them every time they try and put something new, like a feint parry, feint thing in. People mock them. I really like the fact they're trying. Now, some of these, yes, they kind of missed the mark. Some of these maybe aren't the greatest, but I appreciate the fact they're at least trying. So I like the fact that this actually finished quite high with about 57%. Not great, but anyway. 30% of people feel like they're getting more rewards than at the end of the crate raid. So again, when we talked before, people actually feel like they're getting good rewards out of this. 29% I've upgraded characters specifically for this raid, and 18% understand the new raid mechanics. Those are the positive statements. The negative ones, not massively high. So whereas previously when we've done sides like this, a lot of the negative comments get a lot higher scores than the positive ones. The positives are actually quite high. 54%, all I do is hit the auto button and get what I get. 46%, I wish these raids were in a rotation like 3s and 5s. 35%, this game mode gives me motion sickness. 26%, I've not read anything about this raid, how this raid actually works. That could be the lower account people as well. 14%, I missed the crate raid. 13%, I feel I'm missing out on rewards in this new raid. 6%, I frequently hit the currency max on one of the new currencies. So generally relatively positive. I do think the fact people can hit auto and get a decent score probably came in too quickly into the game, I would say. And it's a shame that I appreciate them bringing a new mechanic. I think the speeder bike is a really interesting little game mode in it. It didn't quite hit, maybe, but I appreciate them trying. What do you think, Thysk?
I disagree with you when you say that the auto being able to do a decent job being too quick. I feel like that's exactly what this raid needed. I think that the adoption of this there would have been a lot more pushback without that. Now, if they do this again, if the next raid in 8 months or 7 months or whatever is a significant departure from normal combat, maybe that one you shouldn't be able to auto and get a reasonable score. But I feel like the fact that they're introducing something that we have not had to deal with in the past, at least not as far as raids is concerned, has sort of an easy out and an easy way for people to adopt it. I think that's exactly what they needed. I think that they win over some people with that, and they'll be and people have now 9 months to sort of go on the ride, as I mentioned before. With the I think the utility of a raid is much higher at the end of the raid life cycle than at the beginning, because you don't have as many of the challenges, or you've overcome them at least. And I feel like they'll be able to go through that progression, and then next time, when they might have to actually think about things right from the beginning, they might be more prepared to do it, more willing to do it as well.
Maybe. I applaud them. I like the fact they're trying. But yeah, I take your point. A lot of people, I think, probably this entire thing dropped at a time when people were also quite busy. I get the impression that maybe when it dropped, people hadn't yet got Leia, so they weren't maybe as engaged. It's taken me only until the last kind of couple of weeks to really be as engaged in this, because I was still unlocking Leia and getting her ult. Now I've got Leia and the ult, my score has gone up massively in this Speedy Bite raid. And I do think that when it first came out, I did kind of look at it and go, right, I don't have Leia yet. I'm working towards all these characters that are going to be applicable for this raid. So I won't focus quite so much on the mechanics as much as I now focus, if that makes sense. I think it was too easy to ignore because it was kind of new characters. In my opinion, I like the comment, I wish these raids were in a rotation like 3s and 5s. I think they are missing a bit of a trick. That they have these incredible game modes out there that we spent time designing, and yet they just don't. They haven't put them in a rotation. So I think they would have done better to have done that. Maintaining the weekly cadence to go back to the old crate raid cadence, and maybe adjust the rewards of the crate dragon raid. But it would be nicer to have had them maybe in rotation for me. I'd certainly. But maybe.
I'm glad that they aren't, personally. This is from me specifically. I don't know. It might be good in general to have a rotation, but for me specifically, I don't want to have to remember all the old mechanics. I don't. It's how every week, the first week of 3v3, the first week of 5v5, you feel incredibly uncomfortable. We're gonna get that exact same thing in raids as well. I don't want that. I'm glad that we graduate out of the old raid, and we can literally just forget about it. There's a problem that I have that I know a lot of people don't have because they have other ways of work around it or whatever, and that is I run into the limit on loadouts for characters.
Wow.
I literally can't create new loadouts for new characters, at least not without deleting someone, because that's how I save where my mods go. Like every single character, anytime I have to move mods around, if I have to move mods around for an event or something like that, so that I don't have to record where the mods came from, every character that matters has a loadout, so that I can always just put it back. So if I have to remod for the Third Sister shard mission or something like that, I can do what I have to do. I have a loadout and the only one I have to actually remod is Grand Inquisitor. Everybody else just keeps their mods all the time, but I have a loadout for Grand Inquisitor. He takes mods from 2 to 5 characters, and then I just go through each of those characters that are missing mods. They have a loadout. I put them on. I know a lot of people use hot utils for that or something, but I need more loadouts. I don't want to have to. I don't remod for raids right now, but I don't. If that eventuality comes, I'm not going to have room for them. I'm not going to have room for loadouts for that. And I know a lot of people did that, even for the crate raid. People remodded for it. And to have to then maintain all of that forever, I guess the simple solution is give me more loadouts, but I don't want to have to deal with that complexity either.
How many more is the maximum?
200.
Jesus.
There's more than 200 characters.
I was going to say there's more than 200 characters.
If there was one loadout per character, if that was the max, it would be fine, because not every character needs one. And then I'd have some extras for the characters that like Grand Inquisitor or whatever. But yeah, they've been releasing new characters, and I'm stuck at 200.
No.
So I have to go back and I'm like, all right, well, I guess Sabine doesn't need a loadout. I'll just have to deal with her mods if I ever move them temporarily or whatever.
And what about mod spaces? How do you? I struggle, or I used to struggle on that. I blank sold a ton of them. But
well, that's going to be a problem regardless. Like I do struggle with that. I actually just recently this week went through several of my accounts. I think one of them I didn't do yet, but I just went and culled a bunch of lesser quality mods that I'm probably not going to use to have a little bit more room, because I was getting to the point where I was only having like 8 spaces available. So I'd fill that up. I'd have mods in the mailbox. When I would actually go and level mods on Mondays or whatever, I would be leveling 8 mods, saving 2 of them, selling the other 6, and then I'd go in the mailbox, I'd get 6 mods out, and it was just ridiculous. So I created a little bit more room, but that's going to be it doesn't matter if they give me 500, which is the free space right now, or 1,000 or 1,500. I'm going to end up pushing up against the limit. I don't have a problem with that. 500 is fine. Sure, it'd be nice to have more flexibility, because you know, every so often the character comes out and you're like, oh man, I used to have a mod that had almost no speed and it had all this offense and crit avoidance or whatever, and it'd be perfect for this character. I can live with that. I don't have a problem with the 500 mod spots.
It's making it worse because, like you say, we're getting these events like this speeder bike ride where they're radically different mods that you might need on a character. So whereas in the past, things like accuracy arrows, you just used to sell them, it didn't matter, or crit avoidance arrows and things like that. Lots of these other kind of weird stats that have never really been that useful are now becoming necessary for different game modes or different unlocks or different events, and not having the basic kind. Therefore, you need a much broader plethora of mods. You need a lot more out there. Anyway, speeder bike raid. Generally, people quite like it. Kind of a bit of a summary, new stuff. Leia was seen as a positive GL to bring to the game. People like her. People issue with her team maybe not being as iconic, but I don't think anybody, like you say, I don't think anybody's come up with what that team should be. I don't think anyone's actually came up with an answer, so I don't think I hold them too accountable for that. I think everyone's kind of struggling to come up with what team it should be. She just is quite a narrow character. The moment in the film that she exists in just doesn't have a lot of other people. People love the requirements. The requirements, the relic levels were seen as being good and sort of kind of work. And just a huge disappointment over giving her where did Thysk go? We have lost Thysk. Welcome back, everyone. I thank Thysk for giving me time. Unfortunately, we overran, and therefore Thysk had to leave us. He might be back later on, but I will carry on with the rest of the data myself in the survey, and we will just not have as incredible a discussion as Thysk. Thank you, Thysk, for your time. Please, everyone, go and follow Thysk on Twitch. He is an incredibly intelligent and incredibly smart content creator. Right, next section. Conquest. Oh god. Okay. What do people think of Conquest? This was the, remember when we looked at the game modes at the very, very start, what do people enjoy, what do people not enjoy? Conquest was the bit that people did not enjoy the most. We're now going to look at why. Here is, what we did here, we actually rehashed a question from last year, and we asked exactly the same question again to see whether people's attitude had changed and what had gone on with how people felt with the game mode, whether it changed, whether they had improved. By far the most ticked comment, Conquest is a grind. People really, really struggle with Conquest. It had gone down from 82% to 75%, but a huge number of people just find Conquest a grind. Too many battles, goes on too long, and 52% of people feel like they do Conquest for rewards but don't want to. or 42%, I only do this for the new ship or character. So you look at those top 3, top 4, and what you actually discover is that people are only really doing Conquest at the very, very top. People are doing Conquest to get the character. They're not doing it because they enjoy it as a game mode. They're not doing it because they want to do it as a game mode. They are just having to do it. And that is not great from a gaming point of view. Having a game mode that people see as a chore or just a time sink, when you compare that with something like Grand Arena that people like to see, like to chat about, yeah, just difficult. The one that I thought was probably the most worrying statistic was a year ago we asked people this question, and 35% of people a year ago said Conquest is getting worse since the first one. That's now gone up to 46%. So, whereas when we looked at Datacrons and there was a positivity about the relic levels dropping down, weirdly enough, in Conquest, people are becoming more and more as though this is getting worse. We have certainly kind of moved away from seeing new characters. And remember when we did the first Conquest, the first 2 or 3 Conquests, we actually had iconic new characters in there. We had brand new bosses created specifically for the Conquest. Nowadays, it's becoming more and more just the standard teams. Maybe one additional battle per Conquest, but really not, in my opinion, the effort that CG used to put into it. So yeah, a difficult time for Conquest. People do enjoy the community interaction, and we are now up to 10% of people who enjoy watching content creators doing Conquest game mode. So there is a good positive. More and more people are actually happy to watch content creators now do the game mode. So that is a good thing. So that's Conquest. I think Conquest itself not as... I think Conquest hasn't evolved. I think Conquest was a great idea, but if you remember when they started with Conquest, there was less battles. The sectors weren't quite as long, I don't think. I think they added more battles in. Yes. I think that it is, and having to do the same thing 3 times maybe isn't the best. You look at the changes they made to make the raid every week instead of every 2 weeks. Maybe there's a school of thought that Conquest should be every 6 weeks or every 2 months, and you should get proportionately more rewards for those 2 monthly conquests type thing. Might be a kind of solution to this, because, or simply reduce it from 14 days down to 10 or something like that. It's certainly when you have to do Conquest on the second week, when you're having to GAC at the same time, it can get very kind of like, oh, I'm going to do that and then that. But some people do enjoy Conquest, and some people do see it as being a sort of a fun thing, but certainly on the whole, people see it as more of a chore, something they have to do that they don't want to, and something they do because they have to get that character reward. So yeah, I think Conquest is not in a great state at the moment. It's not in a place that people are really engaging with it. Certainly there were a lot of positive statements on this, but nobody clicked on them. You know, people don't necessarily enjoy the mechanics. They don't necessarily enjoy the feats. Anyway, but yeah, doing the same battle 40 times in, for example, is just a difficult... yeah, I think that would be the solution. Tumble in chat here is saying shorter Conquest, less feats and less rewards. I'm fine with that. Yeah, just kind of scale it back. Don't make it quite so long, quite so difficult, or quite so many battles or many feats. Just scale the whole thing down a bit. There was also a very, very interesting thing where, which I hadn't realised, there was a comment when I think we were talking about Datacrons. And the Datacrons, I hadn't really realised, but Datacrons are gated behind Conquest. So there is almost, unless you're paying crystals for them, there is no way to get Datacrons outside of Conquest. Yes, you'll get some through a free calendar. You can buy some in the Datacron shop. But the real source of Datacrons is Conquest. So, whereas at the start, people were doing it and you were wanting to get the character, the ship, and Datacrons were sort of coming as well, you're kind of forced to do Conquest for two reasons. And there are people in the game who want to skip certain game modes. Now, the penalty for skipping Conquest is very, very high. So, if you try and skip Conquest, you not only miss out on the new character, which then goes into the very expensive and very long unlock process of the catch-up mechanic, I forget what it's called, where you're only getting then 10 shards every month, which can be it's a very, very slow grind if you miss out on the character first time. The other thing you'll miss out on is Datacrons, so you don't get the Datacron materials, you don't get the reroll materials, you don't even get the Datacrons themselves, so Conquest has actually become a game mode which you actually can't skip as well. It's one of all the game modes in the entire game. It's the one you're kind of forced to do the most. You can skip a GAC week. Proving Grounds, thank you, Thysk. Let me know if you fix your technical issues and we can get you back on. Proving Grounds, yes. So I do think that whereas you can skip TW and you miss out on some Relic 9 materials, if you skip GAC, you miss out on some crystals, but not really that many. You don't really need to do battles too much in TB, you can just deploy. So, but in Conquest, you're kind of forced to do it. It's one of the ones where it has a much higher penalty for skipping, and it was something that I didn't appreciate when I was thinking about Datacrons, is just how gated Datacrons are in Conquest. That's where you get them, that's where you upgrade them, and until you get to the end of Sector 3, you're basically limited in how far you can take any Datacrons at all. So there is that kind of, it has another gate in it, I think, which is very difficult, I think, you can't ignore it, you can't skip Conquest, and we're kind of forced to do it. So I think Conquest has a lot of problems, and is one of the ones that your CG is forcing us to do it. It's forcing us to focus on it, and people just don't like focusing. Yes, you also can re-roll. Yes, you can re-roll mats from TW, which you can only get from TW. But I think essentially, Conquest is the one where all these things come from. So just point that out. But so I don't think attitudes of Conquest attitudes kind of have decreased over time. I think the pressure of time, I think the pressure of people struggling for time or struggling for maybe the balance of the game or where to put their time in the game. Conquest is not one that people really enjoy or really want to put their time. So that's Conquest. Summary on Conquest, we've kind of talked through this. Mostly negative on Conquest. It's not something that people really have much positive to say. We can't really practice in it because the teams we face have different abilities and things. Okay, you can join us.
Okay, there we go.
Hi, welcome back to Thysk. Welcome, Thysk. You have not missed anything. We're just talking, obviously you were in chat there, talking about Conquest. Thoughts on Conquest being the only place to get Datacrons? I'd never thought of it really being a gate for Datacrons, but it actually is.
Yeah, you were. I heard you talking about that. I think this is a. I don't know. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing because I think this is part of the reason why the lower GP people have more utility from Datacrons because they don't have to deal with them that much. And realistically, you don't want the really small accounts to be spending their resources worrying about Datacrons early on. Like if they want to pay for it, fine. CG will take their money. But those other resources, like, you really don't want them to get too distracted by datacrons. They need to be building their account, getting into the higher level conquests earlier. So I don't know. I don't necessarily know that it's a bad thing.
I think the more issue is that it's a game mode that you can preferentially skip. You can skip TW because you don't enjoy that, but you really can't skip Conquest as a high, I'm talking not necessarily people that can't get to the things, so they're gated by GP. I'm talking about people that just actually don't enjoy it so much that they just don't want to play it. Those people are just at too big a disadvantage by not playing it.
By not playing it, yeah. I do agree with you. I mean, I see what you're saying. You're drawing a similarity to your take on TW, right? Where you don't really feel like you're missing out too much on not doing TW.
Yeah.
But if you didn't do Conquest, you're missing out on a lot of really good rewards and a character that's going to probably be influential. At least every other character going to be influential, or it's going to hold you back. Like, if you didn't get the Fury class when it came out, you missed out on Leviathan for some amount of time. So I do agree that it is. I don't know. Are you suggesting there's a solution to that though? Because like that was sort of Conquest's whole design. Like, we're going to release 4 characters a year. Now 4.3 characters a year.
I mean,
go ahead.
For me personally, I don't like. I think every single resource in the game should have 2 sources. It should have a primary source, but I think it should have a passive secondary source as well. So
that would be nice.
So like you should be able to get datacrons automatically in mod drops. Imagine every time you rolled on a mod store, you had a small chance of getting some Mark 1s, some Mark 2s, some Mark 3s, and or a datacron. I do think that people would then maybe do more rerolls on, say, the mod store. But I think that'd be a smart way to do it. I think giving a sort of a small passive income to people like that. I certainly think the character can be locked, yes, but I do think locking datacrons. I do think if you're really wanting datacrons to be more liked or more broad in the game, I do think giving people multiple sources. Also on that Relic 9, the Relic 9 mod, whatever that is, the little is it Droid Brains maybe? That's only available in TW. I think that
Droid Brains and Gear to Keyboards. Gear to Keyboards is the crafted one, and Droid Brains is the exclusive drop. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that those Droid Brains should be buyable in a shop, because they're not, apart from the Crystal shop, and are certainly, I think those should have a drop somewhere else in the game, probably in the GAC monthly performance or something. That would be my. That's kind of what I mean. I think every single piece of gear or every single thing in the game should have 2 sources, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't necessarily know that things need to have 2 sources initially, but it would be nice if CG was a little bit better. Now, I think part of the reason Droid Brains haven't seen any letting up on the exclusivity is that they don't have anything next. And the most likely next thing would be Relic 10 and whatever unique resources there. When that happens, Droid Brains are sure to be more available somewhere.
Yeah.
And I don't know if CG should move faster. But something that CG has been really bad about in the first 7 years, maybe I would say, of the history of this game is loosening up on the choke points. So Carbantes were literally a huge choke point for 7 years, maybe 6.5. They finally, with the gear revamps and the raid reward revamps, they finally made it so that Carbantes don't necessarily have to be that big of a deal, that big of a roadblock. Chirotech and later materials still are. But they They kept reusing the stuff too. Carbantes were already difficult to get through Gear 12. Then they used them in Gear 12. Fortunately, they haven't used them in Gear anything beyond. And I mean, you could scrap them, but nobody's going to do that. But they held on to that way too long. That was their biggest gear-related misstep of the first 7 years of the game. They needed to have rare things. And then as they released new stuff, the old stuff that was rare became more available. They were horrible at that. Hopefully they've got the right mentality, and I think they do. I think they understand that what they need to do is they need to make new rare stuff and ease up on the other stuff to let people catch up.
So where does your current roadblock sit? I mean, you obviously have, 4 accounts?
Signal data is my biggest.
Signal data
is my biggest.
Okay.
And part of that is because for a while I wasn't doing 3 refreshes a day on Cantina, right?
Okay.
I keep trying to make ways to make the crystals last longer. So originally I was like refreshing normal energy and fleet energy and Cantina energy every day. I've never really done mod energy every single day. I do mod energy like 5 times a week, and I've actually cut out fleet now. Fleet is the one that I'm getting the least value out of outside of mod. I mean, don't get me wrong, mods are important, but the way I balance my resources, it doesn't get as much resources. I don't refresh mod energy every day. I do it 3 to 5 times a day. So the 350s 3 to 5 times a day or a week. But I had to cut out something. So I cut out fleet because I can get the rewards that I need there from the raid store, from the guild event store. I can get that stuff from elsewhere. It's signal data right now is my biggest bottleneck. And I mean the other relic materials to some degree, obviously the higher level stuff like the Zinbiddles aren't really that much of a problem right now because I don't push stuff super high. Like most of my stuff is geared for a reason. It's a requirement for something or whatnot. But everything above that, the impulse detectors, it's nice that I can get those from the raid store now. And of course, droid brains aren't a problem because like I don't have the other resources to use my droid brains. So my droid brains are actually like they're probably dwindling now at some level, but I only have like my biggest account I think has is it 5 relic 9s? How many relic 9s did we have to have? We had to have
2 or 3.
Admiratus. We had to have Admiratus,
Piet?
Darth Revan. No, Piet's only relic 8.
Okay.
And
Malik?
Darth Malik. Is that the only 3 that we need? Is that it?
Yep, sounds about right.
I think it is. So then I also have Master Luke on every account, and then I have one account that also has Leia and Supreme Leader Kylo. So I have on my biggest account, I think I have 6 relic 9s. No, I have Boba, but the Boba Fett, but that was so I have 7 relic 9s.
I mean, the thing is that my bottlenecks elsewhere. I mean, okay, I don't struggle at all for energy for the signal data. I don't struggle at all for the Zinbiddles and things like that. I'm buying those during the raid. Where I struggle is just simple chirotechs, like simple getting them from gear 8 to gear 9 to gear 10 to gear 11 to gear 12. That's my... And once they get to relic 1 or relic 0, I can then shoot them up to relic 5 or relic 6 or whatever pretty quickly.
Relic 5 is not too difficult. I don't have any problem with that.
Yeah,
I can pretty much take any character I want to gear 12. I could probably take my entire... well, that's not... Yeah, I probably could. I could probably take my entire roster to gear 12 if I wanted to. The Chirotech is not a problem. All of my characters that require Chirotech to get to gear 12 probably already have it.
Okay.
Literally the only thing I do with normal energy when I'm not farming a character is I farm the Chirotech nodes.
Yeah, that's what I do.
I have never let off the gas on refreshing normal energy 350s a day. You know, occasionally I miss it because whatever, but I've never intentionally taken my foot off the gas on 350 energy, 3 crystal energy refreshes a day from normal energy, and I don't have anything else to farm when I don't have a character to farm other than Kyrotech. So that has not really, and then you also get a guild event currency 2 is exclusively basically for getting Kyrotech from the guild event store. Like there's really nothing else of value for that currency. So there's occasionally times when a bunch of stuff just came out that my Kyrotech is sort of exhausted, but I've never really been held back by Kyrotech outside of the first year since it came back, because since I've been playing since the beginning, even my free-to-play accounts, I've been playing since the beginning. So I've been on top of the character shards as best as possible from when Kyrotech came out, and that's literally all I farm. Cool. With normal energy.
Thank you. Interesting. I wonder where, obviously in the comments below you can tell me all about what is your, I'm like a professional YouTuber. Anyway, okay, the future of SWGOH. We are now in the final section. So this is kind of asking where people are, how long are they going to play SWGOH for? Same questions I asked last year. Ask people, are they going to play? Definitely going to play for longer than 12 months. Definitely going to play for 6 months. Probably leave next month. And positive. 51% of people said they will definitely still be playing in 12 months' time. And another 10% said I will definitely still be playing in 6 months' time. And 27% saying I will most likely be paying in 6 months' time. So out of that, you are almost 90 or 88% of people are definitely to most likely going to be playing in 6 months' time. They're not looking to leave the game. They're not looking to stop. I mean, only 3% of people will probably stop in the next 2 months. So even though it's very odd, this, because despite all the dissatisfaction on Datacrons and Conquest, despite all of people kind of saying, oh, I don't like this, I don't like this, I don't like this, when you actually look at how it translates into the length of time people will play the game, they're still pretty happy to play. They've invested enough time and effort in the game that they're not looking to leave, which is positive. Thysk surprised? Yeah.
No, I'm not. I'm not surprised at all. I have a question for you, though. I hope I'm not jumping ahead. But I have a question for you and what your thoughts are when you started playing this game. How long did you think you were going to be playing this game when you started playing this game? And the reason I ask this largely is because I don't know a lot of people who started playing this game realized that this game might have had the legs that it did, or had history playing a game for 8+ years. I had come from a World of Warcraft background, so when I started this game, I expected this. I expected to be in for a long haul, and I guess I was a little naive at the time because I didn't realize that games like this died so well. So I was on the other side. I think a lot of people think games like this don't last very long, but I was on the other side. I thought this game was, oh, well, why wouldn't it go 10 years? So I was expecting the long term. And when I realized how Squad Arena worked, and you were stuck in the same leaderboard, as most people call Shard, forever, I was like, oh crap, I love this. So many people are going to quit this game, and it's going to be like a ghost town in 2 years. Obviously that's not the case. It would have been better for me to wait 2 years before joining the game, because those are the people who quit. The people who started when I did, they didn't quit. I mean, sure, there's lots of attrition. But what did you think when you started this game?
This was the first. Well, almost. I played a game called Game of War or something. I think I played something like that, which was a weird game. Wasn't character collection, but it was kind of, you built up a castle and things like that. But I only played that for maybe about 3-4 months. I'd never played another character collection game, and I'd never so I had no idea. when it started, I probably thought 6 months, 9 months. I didn't expect it to. I didn't think games could go this long. I didn't think that when this game started, there was so much you could bring in. New events like Grand Arena and all these different things. It's weird. I talk in my podcast about when I played DSA and some of the differences, and it was very strange. Other games are now starting with all these game modes, but this game started without so much of these things that I had no idea, but I would say for the first 18 months, there wasn't a lot to do. You probably logged in and spent about 5 minutes a day in it.
That's why I have 4 accounts. I could afford to do that. Today, I would never have 4 accounts.
Yeah, it was it's an interesting question. I never thought it would go this long. But now, having played it for so long, I like a lot of people here. I can't imagine not playing it, and I certainly think the game's in a great space, better than it has been. So I have no idea. I can't imagine. I never thought a game would go this long or could go this long. Anyway,
I think a lot of people. I was actually expecting, like I said, I actually thought most people would have that mentality, and I thought that most people would stop it because I don't really feel like, there's obviously very, very dedicated fans of Star Wars and stuff like that and of games, but I had seen so much attrition in World of Warcraft that I didn't think that anybody would stick with a mobile. I knew I would. But I didn't think anybody, the majority of people would stick with a mobile game for even 4 years, let alone 8.
I mean, maybe they got a little bit of a boost during COVID, and they maybe had people who
but COVID was already 5 years into the game's life, right?
But maybe that prolonged, or gave it a little bit of an extra boost over 9 months, or got people a little bit more hooked on the game, you could say.
That's another interesting point. COVID was a resurgence for this game, and it was right around the Dark Ages when a lot of people were really crapping on the game. Do you think this game would have maybe died if it wasn't for COVID? I don't think so personally, but I think COVID helped it.
I don't think it would have died, but I certainly think it wouldn't be anywhere near as strong. I think more people would have left by attrition by then, by now. So I definitely think more people kind of spend 9 months maybe spending a bit more on the game, if they did spend, maybe certainly investing more time and effort in mods and time and effort in what they're doing, and certainly engaging more with content creators and becoming more part of a community and a wider community. So I do think there was certainly, I don't think it would have died. Certainly not. I think I struggle with this game ever dying, if I'm honest. The only thing I see this game potentially ending in is if the basic technology changes, and the coding from a 7, 8, 9 years ago is no longer working on a new phone. Those sorts of things. I think that's the only kind of scenario I would see this game kind of stopping. Anyway, but yes, I certainly wish I'd waited a couple of weeks to join my fleet shard or unlock ships. If I'd done that, I would have been in a ghost town by now, I would have thought, instead of a...
Yeah, that's my single... If I could go back in time and change one thing in this game, there's literally only one thing that I would change in this game, and that is when fleets came out, I would wait 2 days before I did it. Because when fleets came out, they told everybody that they were, wasn't going to be first come first serve. There's this algorithm that's going to put you on. So I was like, I don't know. Am I already assigned to a leaderboard? Like, should I be getting in? If I don't get in right now, am I going to be missing out because I'm already on a leaderboard? I'm just getting farther and farther behind. So 3 of my accounts got in right away. Those leaderboards suck.
Yeah,
they're still super busy. One of them is the worst leaderboard in the game on fleets. And on the other one, I was like, you know what? on this account's best prepared to make up for the fact that I missed out on a day and a half or 2 days or whatever. I'm just going to hold off. That one is super chill. It's still pretty busy comparatively, but I know there's some newer ones that are even more ghost town. But that one, I rarely, even if I don't climb for 3 days, I don't get knocked out of top 20 almost always.
I can't even
if I could have just waited, just literally 2 days, I just go back in time, tell myself, wait 2 days, it's all right. That they're telling you that there's an algorithm that's going to put you, but you're not actually assigned yet. Just wait. This game would be so much easier.
Yeah, I thought I was going to be in the same ship shard as my squad arena shard. You know, like
they specifically said it wasn't going to be like that. I mean, certain people did see a larger percentage depending on, because there's different bands. Like if you had only been playing for a certain amount of time, you were in a certain group, and if you'd been recently hit the level that where ships unlocked is different, stuff like that. But yeah, they specifically said that it was explicitly trying to make it so you don't have exactly the same people.
Yeah. Anyway, so 1 year ago we asked people the same question as this.
Like I just derailed everything from what exactly you wanted to talk about.
No.
I think it was relevant, but it was still a derailment.
Possibly. But 1 year ago, whereas 51% of people are saying they'll definitely still be playing in 12 months' time today, a year ago it was only 40%. And when you look at those yellow, the pink, and the red, 8% of people a year ago said they're definitely probably leave in 2 months. And in total, you're looking at 23% of people were very uncertain about the game a year ago, and that has reduced all the way down to about 12% now. So far more people enjoying the game, far more people certainly sticking with the game. So despite the fact that we've talked all about Datacrons and Conquest and what's wrong with this and what's wrong with this, far better positivity in the game, far more people more enjoying, more committed, or are certainly going to stay longer. You happy? Good to see. Good to see. Thysk is stunned into silence, which is good.
Oh, I'm sorry. Was I supposed to say something?
Oh, no. I just didn't know if you'd any, good to see, basically.
I think I derailed enough. No, I agree. I 100%. I mean, again, my mentality from this has always been I'm in it for the long haul from day one. So my opinion would still be that.
Yeah. Cool. So that's good. Okay, bit of fun. We asked the people who filled in the survey, what did they think was coming first to the game? And they were only allowed to pick one thing. And they had to choose between a new Thrawn, a new Ahsoka, another GL, a 9th GL, or a 10th GL, wherever we are, Relic 10, or level 90. And Red 5, obviously. We always put Red 5
Pilot
in
Pilot Luke.
Yeah, Red 5, Pilot Luke. Whereas last year, I would say when we asked this question last year, people got it right. People picked a new Cal Kestis, or Cal Kestis coming to the game, was the largest a year ago, and less than about a month later, they announced Cal Kestis coming to the game. So people were right last year. This year, they're kind of a bit more split, but they are saying Relic 10. They think 34% of people believe that Relic 10 will come to the game. Before another GL, before Red 5, before Thrawn, Ahsoka, or level 90. Nobody thinks we'll ever get level 90, which I kind of agree with them. So I think people are suggesting Relic 10. The other thing I found very interesting is a lot more people think a new Thrawn is more likely than a new Ahsoka Tano. So people are kind of...
we have 3 Ahsokas already.
Well, yeah, we got 20 hands. But yes. But it was just interesting with the show being called Ahsoka, with it being maybe a different Ahsoka completely. But people still thought a new Thrawn would be the next character to add. and separate from a 9th GL. So, and obviously Red 5 piloted by Luke, or Luke's Red 5, whatever you. Thoughts? Agree? Relic 10 probably likely to come soon.
Yeah, I feel like it has to. Like we were just mentioning just a bit ago, like for them to loosen up the Relic 9 materials, I feel like Relic 10 has to come out first. And I do think that we're going to get Relic 10 soon. I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't happen this year, but I would be surprised if it doesn't happen by the end of next year. That being said, if I remember correctly, their Relic levels usually came out middle of the year.
Something like
so
that.
I guess that would still be slightly before the Galactic Legend, which would also be able to put the screws to people to get them to adopt the Relic 10 early on a new Galactic Legend. But realistically, I mean, well, I guess the question is, does a new Thrawn happen before then? And with the series over, the Ahsoka series over, no confirmation as far as I'm aware that season 2 of Ahsoka is happening, although everyone assumes that it will. I don't know.
For me, I see if Thrawn is going to end up on the big screen at some point, I think
Save it for that.
A Thrawn GL will wait until that.
Oh yeah, of course. Thrawn
so,
Galactic Legend, yes, but they could give us a new Galactic Legend. Like the natural team is the Morgan, Thrawn,
Balin,
Shin,
Baylor,
yeah, Balin, Shin, and
Night Sister, the witch.
That was Morgan. And the Inquisitor that died in 2 seconds. Would probably be the 5 if they were going to make a whole new team.
Yeah, I just don't. I think they're going to have to wait to see where the film goes, because if they're going to start bringing a lot of these back into film, and if they do announce a new Ahsoka show, or they try and bridge the gap or bring that forward, I think we'll see a Thrawn GL save for then. Therefore, I actually don't think they'll launch another Thrawn in the interim, and I don't think we'll see. I don't know. We could see another Ahsoka, but then we're just rehashing sort of Mama Hera, new Sabine. I don't know. I certainly agree. I think Relic 10. I do. Okay, one thing I do have a small problem with the game, I think for no apparent reason they've made certain things a meme. Now, as much as when I started playing this game, I thought, right, if they ever launch Jedi Knight Luke, that's the end of the game. That's like break glass to end game. You know, when they launch that ultimate character. And very often people felt that Red 5 would be the end of ships. Now, I think we know that that's just not true now. So the fact that they are specifically saying, I think they should just add Red 5. I think we've got to the point where not having Jar Jar Binks, not having Red 5, not having Beckett, not having like very strong central iconic characters and items in the game, I think are becoming more of an odd omission rather than necessarily oh, that'll come in the future. You know,
Beckett?
Well, maybe not Beckett, but the others. But I definitely think we should just have Red 5. There's no reason to not have it at this point.
I disagree specifically with Luke's X-Wing.
Red 5.
With Jar Jar, I could see. But here's the thing. I think that CG still wants to keep as many crowd pleasers as they can in tow. Now, Luke's X-Wing, you refer to it, Red 5. I think that the reason that they don't release that is because they want it to be an impactful ship. So they're not going to release that until it is going to be meta. Right now, they could release Luke's X-Wing. It could make Home 1 great again, but it's not designed to be meta.
Yeah.
So I don't think that they're going to do that until that ship can be meta. So, 4 years from now, when Rebels get to be meta again somehow, I think then we could see that. But with the other ones, I think Jar Jar is being kept just like, okay, when if Star Wars goes through their dry spell, because they don't know what Lucasfilm is going to do, they don't know what Disney's going to do. They want to make sure that when Disney has these periods where they're not releasing, like right now, they're not releasing a movie for. When did Rise of Skywalker came out? 2019, I think.
Yep.
And we're not going to have another movie for like 2 more years or so. I think 2025 is when they expect the first of the new series of Star Wars movies. They want to have some things ready that they can draw on. That's going to engage people again. They can bring people back. They did it with Revan during a little bit of a dry spell before. But a lot of people didn't like Revan. Also, I wanted to point out that so far there's no Galactic Legend that hasn't been on the big screen. So I definitely agree that Thrawn isn't going to be a Galactic Legend until that's true as well. And we might get an Ahsoka or something as well. Like they'll probably just figure out, okay, who makes sense as a light side Galactic Legend when that Thrawn movie comes out.
So do you eliminate Revan Reborn as a GL?
I think it's possible, but I don't see it happening yet. I feel like they're going to.
I agree with you that GLs kind of need to be big screen. For the mass market, the mass visibility, and I mean, yes, inside our circles we know who these characters are, but in the middle of China or the middle of the Philippines or growing markets or developing markets, people don't necessarily have read all the books or seen all the series. Is certainly there are people that will have, but I agree. I think GLs for me are exclusively main screen film characters, at least at the moment. So Relic 10, and I agree. I have to say, I think Relic 10. I think when we see a road ahead, I think we'll see hints of Relic 10. We might see hints of a new game mode or a new something. Or an updated TW or an updated GAC board or something, and inside that we might see a Relic 10 material kind of drop inside that space. And I think Relic 10, whereas Relic 9 was defensive, it'll be interesting to see what Relic 10 does. I wouldn't even be surprised if they dropped Relic 10, 11 and 12 at the same time. And actually, rather than being an incremental increase to all the stats, the way we've had with the other relics start to become maybe a single stat boost or, something along those lines. That actually they start nuancing it more. And the way that they did with Relic 9 being about defensive stats, Relic 10 then becomes just only offense, but doesn't boost the other things, or even Relic 10, 11, 12 don't work on GLs. Something along those lines. I think we might see them slightly nuanced rather than just this kind of, right, Relic 10 gives a big boost, in my opinion.
I don't think they're going to change the formula too much.
No.
What did you mean about 11 and 12 not working on GLs?
Well, I actually think that the balance of the game, I think if we keep buffing GLs and launching in a blanket buff like a relic level, I think it creates a lot of game balance problems with GLs. Because certain GLs are kind of balanced at the moment, but if you suddenly gave them, if you gave JML more protection, or you're suddenly creating an even bigger problem. You end up with a GL where maybe the counter doesn't work anymore. Some of these boosts are getting out of hand, and I think there's a chance that we might get relics that aren't able to be put on to GLs, or a relic level at 10, 11, 12 don't do anything to GLs. And we see them being more pushed to other characters. That's kind of what I mean. For me, GLs are a very difficult game balance at the moment. They're too easy to put on defense and too hard to beat. And when you start putting Datacrons on top of that, some of them tip into the annoying. Yeah, so I don't know. That's kind of what I mean. I think when they launched Relic 9, they obviously decided they wanted to boost defensive stats of certain characters.
Well, at the time, offense was starting to just win.
Yes.
Like offense, they also nerfed damage avoidance, or not damage.
Yeah.
No, armor penetration. They nerfed all that stuff because the game was becoming too offensive. Like you could just things were just being blown up way too fast. And most games like this go through a period where that stuff gets out of whack. Either it gets way too sloggy and everybody's way too tanky and battles take too long, or at some point the offense gets so good that almost nothing stands up to it. It's almost pointless to have tanks. And what they did was they stepped back at that point and they said, okay, that was what was happening. Offense was too good. We need to course correct, and we're gonna send this home by also saying that Relic 9 is also going to boost those tanks a little bit more. So if you ever have a situation where you are getting blown up, you can go up to Relic 9, and that'll give you that extra little bit of a bump there. And of course, it helps on people like Master Luke, where you get that extra big protection hit too. That helps his mechanics and so forth, and so on. But I don't necessarily think I don't necessarily think that's going to be a one-off. Like I don't necessarily see them not doing that type of thing in the future. But I don't think they're going to go drastically different from the formula that they've had so far.
I think there's an opportunity for them to exclude GLs from relic levels, to be honest. I think it's too easy. If you look at a GL team, you relic up the GL and you leave the others at R5. And that gives enough of a boost because it's ultimately GL is the hardest one to kill. I think they would actually make more money, and I'm talking to CG here for money. If you actually said, right, you can't relic 10 your GL, you can only do the 4 around them. I think you'd see more people taking the side characters to higher relic levels, and I think your counters would be more fun. But look, that's me spitballing. I don't know. I think we will see them move away from blanket increases, if that makes sense. Okay. Should we carry on? We're at the end. We know this. SWGOH's in a better place than it was a year ago. More people are certain they'll continue playing long into the future. And I guess a lot of enjoyment's been derived from GAC, TW, TB, but the long-standing problems of Datacrons and Conquest still remain. And we think that we're going to get Relic 10 next. And in a few final comments, we asked people to just kind of spitball on what they thought about the game. SWGOH's future is looking fairly solid. We've seen a slowdown in the release of GLs and events tied to them. We're seeing a new epic confrontation looming with Bo Mandalore. There's not strictly a rule that a new raid requires a new GL. It could be very easily be tailored for an epic unit or similar that needs decent investment to unlock. The formula that SWGOH has used has been consistent for all of its years so far, and it's one that still works. Small touch-ups to keep modes fresh and engaging are all that is needed. Can you guys focus on quality for a bit? This last raid is really bad, so boring. Conquest is a grind. TB is boring. Doesn't quality bring money? So keep implementing new modes, even if they aren't well received. TW can use a little updating. SWGOH's future is fairly solid. We've seen as... Oh no, I've read this one. Okay. Oh, I've done... Oh yeah, I have an extra slide. Okay. Keep up the good work. I'd like to see more catch-up mechanics on older releases beside packs for new players. Something radical is required to engage players. I love this game heaps. I wish the developers listened to the community more. There's a few things that still need ironing out, but I feel this has been a good year. The game is in what feels like one of its best places for a while, so next year is exciting. Hopefully more and more bounty hunters. And now we are in a regular cadence and monthly cycle. It's easier to plan SWGOH into my weeks without causing as much impact. SWGOH is in a better place in 2023 than it was in 2022. And I guess that's a good way to kind of summarize, and I agree. I think I love the new cadence. Makes it much easier to plan. both for them and for us. And also, I do agree it's in a much better place than it was a year ago. So yeah, good stuff. Final thoughts, Thysk?
I just wanted to share one thought based on the cadence of the raid. You mentioned that that didn't necessarily need a new Galactic Legend for everyone, and I don't think they will have a new Galactic Legend, but I think there will be a Galactic Legend featured. I think what they'll do is they'll alternate a new raid every 9 months. They're planning every 9 months, right? We don't expect them to release a new Galactic Legend every 9 months. I think they're going to do a new Galactic Legend every 18 months, a year and a half. And what they're going to do is have each alternate between a new Galactic Legend and an existing Galactic Legend. This is part of the reason why they give us the Lightspeed bundles to let people get caught up, and they can then feature those Galactic Legends that never really got featured in that same way. And it makes it so that people can't get by with just skipping Galactic Legends. Like, 2 of my accounts don't have Lord Vader. I really am not in any hurry to get Lord Vader, but if he's ever part of a raid, I'm going to have to.
Yeah, no, I agree. I do agree with them potentially doubling back. We certainly saw that a lot of people ignored Rey the first time, and we're now seeing through the Lightspeed bundle people catching up and unlocking Rey now. I think makes sense for them to go back and double back. And generally, game in a great place, better place than it was a year ago.
I mean, yeah, Datacron. I think they're more mature in how they're handling the Datacrons. I think that's significantly better. The cadence of not having too many characters, but having enough new characters that people are excited is good. Like we had 1 year where we got like 12 new characters the whole year or something like that. It was ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're striking that balance a whole lot better, and I think they're doing a really good job right now. Yeah,
I agree. Thank you everyone, and just thank you everyone who took time to fill in the survey. If you didn't manage to fill it in this year, then it'll be back in 2024. So
you only have to wait 11 months.
You only need to wait 11 months. And we will repeat some of the questions. So we will keep building up data year on year. We'll see how people change. You'll start to see those more. I may use some of these statistics in like a month's time at the next roundtable of one, when we look at some of the more stuff in detail, and we have more time to go through it. But honestly, please, thank you everyone who took time, and thank you everyone who's watched this either on YouTube or on live on Twitch. Please support Thysk on Twitch. You are an absolute legend. I will put the links down below on the YouTube video. Thank you for your time this morning. You are a very knowledgeable man with a very balanced voice. Thank you. Appreciate it.
I'm happy to be on here.
We are always happy to have you on our little island. And please come and check us out on Welcome to Sandflies on Twitch as well. And yeah, please like and subscribe. And any comments, just make them down below. And the survey will be back in 2024, and we will continue to gather more information from the community. And this is generally your option, your chance to get your voice out there. I can't guarantee CG will listen to anything we say, but you know what? At least if we're talking about it, we're able to kind of give our ideas and our opinions anyway. Good. Thank you everyone for being here. Thank you, and good night, YouTube.